Election night in Saskatchewan, 1982. Tory leader Grant Devine crushes the NDP in a landslide win. Almost 20 years later, and the provincial Tory party itself is crushed under the weight of disgrace.
No comment.
More than a dozen former Tory MLAs and party workers are convicted of fraud in schemes bilking taxpayers of almost $1 million. Men like former MLA Michael Hopfner, sentenced to 18 months in jail. Director of Communications John Scraba gets 2.5 years. Caucus Chairman Lorne McLaren sentenced to 3.5 years in the penitentiary. But the highest price is paid by a man never charged with any crime, Jack Wolfe, an idealist, dreamer, and family man.
I do remember the first time I saw him, this tall, slender man coming down the hall, and he had a big smile, and he just looked like a nice person, and I just thought, that's a nice guy. Here's a piece of Pluto. He goes on this side over here. We'll just
Gail Wolfe is Jack Wolfe's widow. She was 3 months pregnant with their youngest child when Jack Wolfe committed suicide in 1995.
I tell her that she had a really nice dad and that he loved her even though he didn't get to see her. I bet Stephen could put this. I guess it's for anybody that has to deal with losing somebody that they love. It's hard. But I guess maybe with suicide it's a little bit harder, just a little.
Jack Wolfe was born and raised in Saskatchewan cattle country. As quaint as it sounds, character is important here, a place where folks often count on each other for survival. And folks counted on Wolfe. He was the veterinarian in the isolated community of Rock Glen. Then in 1988, Wolfe entered politics.
He had a lot of ideas, and people talked to him and they had ideas, and he just saw that as a route to really help the area, even more so than being a vet.
Jack Wolfe ran as a Tory, but he wasn't really a partisan politician. He wanted to pave roads, fill potholes, and stand up for his rural community at the legislature. Wolfe believed that being with the party in power was simply the way to get things done. But on his first day at the legislature, Wolfe got a surprising peek behind the scenes at his new government.
He was called to go to Regina just to meet with some of the staff there who were going to explain to him how things worked. He could legally claim 12 months worth of expenses. Really, he only had part of 1 month, you know, that he was an MLA, but legally, he was told that he could claim the whole year's worth, and some people said, claim it. So-and-so would, you know. It's legal, just do it. It was all new to Jack. He had to learn a lot when he started. We were both pretty naive, I think.
When the bad actors got into control, it was like the Beverly Hillbillies had taken over the legislature, and the premier was Mr. Drysdale.
Michael McCafferty was John Diefenbaker's last executive assistant. McCafferty wanted to follow in Diefenbaker's footsteps, and so he came out to Saskatchewan to work for the provincial Progressive Conservatives. But McCafferty says trouble started brewing in the Tory caucus almost immediately after their landslide win in 1982. Jack Wolfe had no idea what he was getting into.
Jack Wolfe was elected at a time when the rot, and I'm talking rot, had totally set into the Devine government. The Gigatech scandal, the scandals that we know of that have gone through the courts, and yet here comes a man totally innocent of politics, totally innocent of cronyism, and totally innocent of the dark side of politics, and he comes thrown into that arena.
Most of Devine's MLAs and staff members were honorable, but some were not, and they were the ones who, behind the scenes, were turning things upside down. David Tkachuk was one of Devine's key advisors, but many MLAs hated his guts. Tkachuk was a mean drunk. He now admits he was an alcoholic at the time. He once accosted the teenage daughter of a Tory MLA. Another time, Tkachuk apologized after ripping the blouse of a young female Tory MLA. Still another of Devine's aides once forced a young female worker into having oral sex in his office, then threatened a second woman who refused. MLA Jerry Muirhead was so furious he grabbed Devine outside the legislative chamber, warning he'd go to the newspapers with the story if the aide wasn't fired. There are many stories like these, all of which were common knowledge among Tories at the time. The veterinarian from Rock Glen had joined a caucus in chaos. Then John Scraba was hired as Director of Communications for the Tory caucus. Scraba helped a group of Tory MLAs sneak money from their communications allowances. The cash was then stashed away in safety deposit boxes and in a locked file cabinet in Scraba's office. Public money was flowing out of room 203 in the legislature.
The word got out that if you needed money, all you had to do was go to John Scraba. He'd go in and say that need a couple of $1,000. One night I came into my office to write a speech, and there he was, and my desk was covered with all sorts of cash, including $1,000 bills and $100 bills, and he was counting it in little stacks.
Gail Wolfe says her husband never mentioned these things to her. Jack Wolfe might not have known the details of the scams, but Michael McCafferty says Wolfe did know about the behavior of some of his colleagues, and he was worried. The Tories were defeated in 1991. Jack Wolfe returned to Rock Glen. But then the RCMP came knocking. Somehow, Wolfe had ended up with an old computer he believed had been purchased properly.
Jack Wolfe was told by John Scraba that he should have a computer. John Scraba took care of the details, which were illegal. Jack Wolfe would have had no idea whatsoever that it was illegal. None whatsoever. In other words, he was the victim of the dishonesty of John Scraba.
Gail Wolfe says Jack was badly shaken by the pressure from police investigators. She remembers Jack was especially upset by having to testify against his former colleagues, men he trusted and respected.
He hated everything about having to go and testify. He felt that the RCMP were trying to nudge him a little bit towards giving certain answers to some of their questions that he didn't feel he could answer.
Jack received a call from his lawyer sometime on February 2nd, 1995. The lawyer warned Jack he was about to be arrested. Jack Wolfe had reached the end. Feeling trapped, believing politics lay behind his imminent prosecution, and perhaps agonized by having to turn against his former colleagues and friends, Jack Wolfe went to his veterinary clinic and shot himself in the head. He left a note to his wife and family saying, "I did not do anything wrong other than trust others. Goodbye and God bless you all, Jack."
I believe that the system killed Jack Wolfe because he came in at a time when the rot and corruption had set in the Devine government, and he became an innocent victim of it.
What killed Jack Wolfe?
I guess I'd say a broken heart, maybe. Just kind of, he'd seen, maybe he thought he'd come to, the end of his dreams.
Wolfe entered political life as an idealist, as a true believer in politics as a means to getting good things accomplished in the community. Wolfe left political life hounded by the police, caught up in winds of corruption, which finally carried him to his death.